Good Wednesday morning, everyone, and welcome to November. Today is November the 1st, and we are continuing our read through the historical text of the Old Testament. We are in the middle of Second Chronicles right now. We're going to be reading today from chapter 9, which is going to tell us the details about the Queen of Sheba's visit to Solomon, and then just continued description of Solomon's incredible wealth, his accumulation of riches, and then we're going to see Solomon step off to the side as the kingdom will be divided in our read tomorrow in chapter 10. Remember, here in Chronicles, we don't have as many details about these various time periods as we did in the previous historical accounts, but they are given here for what is recorded is given to us for a theological purpose, again, to show how Israel got to where they were at their height, and then to see why they were brought down so low. And it all comes down to faithfulness to the covenant. We'll see that at times with these various characters, but then we're also going to see times where they're not very, very faithful, where they get loose on some of the dictates of the law. And we're going to see that thing here within the text, say, of Second Chronicles chapter 9. So let me get the text up on the screen, and we'll read along together here. Second Chronicles chapter 9 in verse number 1. Second Chronicles chapter 9, verse number 1. The Queen of Sheba heard of Solomon's fame, so she came to test Solomon with difficult questions at Jerusalem with a very large entourage, with camels bearing spices, gold in abundance, and precious stones. She came to Solomon and spoke with him about everything that was on her mind. So Solomon answered all her questions. Nothing was too difficult for Solomon to explain to her. When the Queen of Sheba observed Solomon's wisdom, the palace he had built, and the food at his table, his servants' residence, his attendant service and their attire, his cupbearers and their attire, and the burnt offerings he offered at Yahweh's temple, it took her breath away. She said to the king, "The report I heard in my own country about your words and about your wisdom is true, but I didn't believe the reports until I came and saw it with my own eyes. Indeed, I was not even told half of your great wisdom. You far exceed the report I heard. How happy are your men? How happy are these servants of yours who always stand in your presence hearing your wisdom? Blessed be Yahweh your God. He delighted in you and put you on his throne as king for Yahweh your God, because your God loved Israel enough to establish them forever. He has set you over them as a king to carry out justice and righteousness." Then she gave the king 4.5 tons of gold, a great quantity of spices and precious stones. There never were such spices as those the Queen of Sheba gave to King Solomon. In addition, Hiram's servants and King Solomon's servants who brought gold from Ophir also brought algum wood and precious stones. The king made the algum wood into walkways for Yahweh's temple and for the king's palace, and into lyres and harps for the singers. Never before had anything like them been seen in the land of Judah. King Solomon gave the Queen of Sheba her every desire, whatever she asked for, far more than she brought the king. Then she, along with her servants, returned to her own country. The weight of gold that came to Solomon annually was 25 tons, besides what was brought by the merchants and traders. All the Arabian kings and governors of the land also brought gold and silver to Solomon. King Solomon made 200 large shields of hammered gold. 15 pounds of hammered gold went into each shield. He made 300 small shields of hammered gold. 7.5 pounds of gold went into each shield. The king put them in the house of the forest of Lebanon. The king also made a large ivory throne and overlaid it with pure gold. The throne had 6 steps. There was a footstool covered in gold for the throne, armrests on either side of the seats, and 2 lions standing beside the armrest. 12 lions were standing there in the 6 steps, one at each end. Nothing like it had ever been made in any other kingdom. All of King Solomon's drinking cups were gold, and all the utensils of the house of the forest of Lebanon were pure gold. There was no silver, since it was considered as nothing in Solomon's time. For the king's ships kept going to Tarshish with Hiram's servants, and once every 3 years the ships of Tarshish would arrive bearing gold, silver, ivory, apes, and peacocks. King Solomon surpassed all the kings of the world in riches and wisdom. All the kings of the world wanted an audience with Solomon to hear the wisdom God had put in his heart. Each of them would bring his own gift, items of silver and gold, clothing, weapons, spices, and horses and mules as an annual tribute. Solomon had 4,000 stalls for horses and chariots and 12,000 horsemen. He stationed them in the chariot cities and with the king in Jerusalem. He ruled over all the kings from the Euphrates River to the land of the Philistines and as far as the border of Egypt. The king made silver as common in Jerusalem as stones, and he made cedar as abundant as sycamore in the Judean foothills. They were bringing horses for Solomon from Egypt and from all the countries. The remaining events of Solomon's reign, from the beginning to end, are written in the events of the prophet Nathan, the prophet Ahijah, the Shilonites, and the visions of the seer Iddo, concerning Jeroboam, son of Nebat. Solomon reigned in Jerusalem over all Israel for 40 years. Solomon rested with his ancestors and was buried in the city of his father David. His son Rehoboam became king in his place. And that is 2 Chronicles chapter 9. Again, we're introduced here to the character that is the Queen of Sheba. And the text says that she heard of Solomon's fame. She probably heard of Solomon's fame because Solomon was probably cutting into a bit of her success. She was the Queen of Sheba, or another word for that is, or another name for this kingdom would be Saba. This would be at the southern border, or the southern tip of the Arabian Peninsula. So she would have been on a very hot trade route, people coming up into the Red Sea and such. And with Solomon and his arrangement with Hiram, probably was cutting into some of her business, and she's probably wondering, where did this guy come from? He's not part of a huge kingdom. How is he having such great success? So she comes personally, which has been a very long and difficult journey, but she comes because she wants to test Solomon with difficult questions at Jerusalem, and she came with a very large entourage. I'm sure she is coming seeking to impress Solomon with everything that she can bring, but instead she is the one who ends up being very impressed. Solomon answers all of her difficult questions. Nothing was too difficult for Solomon to explain to her. She witnessed everything that Solomon was about. She witnessed his wisdom, the palace he had built, the food at his table, the servants' residence, his attendant service, their attire, the cupbearer's attire, everything that was offered in worship to Yahweh. And the text says in the CSB that it took her breath away. She was extremely, extremely impressed with everything that Solomon was about. And she admits that, which I'm sure would have been something probably difficult for her to do as a woman of great power herself, to admit that somebody actually impressed her. She said, "The report I heard in my own country about your words and about your wisdom is true, but I didn't believe it until I came and saw it. I wasn't even told half of it. You far exceed the report I heard. Look at how happy everything is. Look at how great everything is." And then I wanted us to note that she speaks a blessing of Yahweh, that he delighted in you and put you on his throne, is because God loves Israel enough that he established them forever. He sets you as king over them to carry out justice and righteousness. She obviously is so impressed with Solomon, and has an understanding, though, that Solomon was what he was because Yahweh, the God of Israel, was with him. I think it's very interesting. And this is not the first time that we've seen something like this, where foreign kings acknowledged the reality and power of Yahweh. Think about Hiram himself did that very thing whenever Solomon reached out to him, and he responded, Hiram did, by talking about the goodness of God and setting David's son on the throne of Israel. So all this, so the Queen of Sheba, she comes again, she brings all these things for Solomon, which I'm sure to him, this is nothing special. It's not a drop in the bucket for him, because we read about, again, the servants of Hiram and the servants of Solomon bringing all the gold from Ophir, and how he used not just the gold, but the algum wood and all these different things. Again, it was just such an incredible time of great affluence in Israel at this time. Verse 12, King Solomon gave the Queen of Sheba her every desire, whatever she asked, far more than she brought to the king. Again, she came to impress him, but she is the one who ended up leaving impressed. And then she and her servants returned to her own country. So again, even the Queen of Sheba recognized that the great success of Solomon, that it was rooted in the reality of Yahweh and the blessings that he had given to him. Verses 13 through, let's see here, 13 through 21, just talk about the wealth of Solomon. He had such great possessions, such great amount of gold, that one of the ways he dealt with that was by putting gold basically on everything. And then not only that, making the gold into 200 large shields. Each shield was 15 pounds of hammered gold. Then he also made 300 small shields of hammered gold. 7.5 pounds of gold went into those, and he put those in the house of the forest of Lebanon. Again, so much gold that what's he going to do with it? Is it just going to sit somewhere? Well, no, he's going to put it to use by making it into these shields, and then also putting gold over his throne. Again, nothing like it had ever been made in any other kingdom. Even his drinking cups were gold. Utensils were gold. Nothing was silver. Why? Well, because silver was considered nothing during Solomon's time, because there was so much gold. Silver basically accounted for nothing. And again, this stuff just keeps coming from Ophir. But we also have ships of Hiram, servants coming from Tarshish, bringing more gold, silver, ivory, apes, and peacocks. Again, or another alternate translation says instead of peacocks, baboons. That's just a translation issue. Not really exactly sure what some of these words mean as far as the animals go. Have different words developing over time. Verse 22, the King Solomon tells us that he surpassed all the kings of the world in riches and wisdom. Remember, that's what Yahweh asked. He's like, what can I give you? And Solomon requested wisdom. He was given that for sure. And then God said, because you asked for wisdom, I will also give you these other things. And he certainly had these things. And the chronicler definitely gives the proper, like the Queen of Sheba, gives the proper credit where it is due. He said that the wisdom God had put in his heart was what the kings of the world wanted to come and have an audience with Solomon. And the chronicler says, well, he was what he was because of what God had given him. And they would even bring gifts for Solomon as an annual tribute. Verses 25 through 28 talk about the horses and the chariots. Again, all of this is sounding great, but here we have a very clear violation of Deuteronomy 17, verses 16 and 17, that he was not supposed to accrue these various things. Part of that, it seems, would be a way to keep the king humble, to know that whatever God would provide for him as far as the military and the instruments of war go would be enough. But Solomon here is accumulating these things. We're told that he ruled all the kings from the Euphrates in the east to the land of the Philistines in the west by the sea, and then all the way down south to Egypt. Again, just so many great blessings and affluence are found within Solomon's reign at this time. Certainly the height of the nation of Israel as far as their political power, their financial power, their economic power, just everything really is so strong during Solomon's reign. And again, all gets back to what God was willing to provide for him. We're again told that everything else about Solomon's reign is written elsewhere, which tells us that what we have, again, is not exhaustive, but is given for a reason, again, to show that God was blessing the people. God was blessing them through Solomon. And I want to note as well that we don't have here any of the negative things about Solomon. We don't read about the way his wives, actually his wives are not even mentioned here, apart from the wife that is the daughter of Pharaoh. But all the wives that he had, the hundreds of wives, hundreds of concubines, they're not mentioned here. And again, people ask why. That is the chronicler ignoring the failures of Solomon? No, I don't think he is. But he's just showing again what can happen whenever God's wisdom is desired. And again, there were these things that we see where Solomon was off track, but then there was times whenever Solomon followed the law. There were things that he was majorly concerned with that mattered. So it's again with Solomon, it's very much a mixed bag of times whenever he was very faithful to the law and times where he was not. But even through all that, God blessed the people in a very tremendous way. And yet, knowing what we know from Samuel and the kings, that's not going to last forever. Once Rehoboam comes onto the scene, we know that Jeroboam is also going to make a play for power. And as we note, as we're going to read tomorrow in chapter 10, the kingdom's going to be divided. And God's blessing is very quickly going to be removed from the people as a whole because, well, they're not faithful to him and they are not going to show loyalty. And that's going to lead to a great deal of trouble, as we'll see tomorrow. If you have any questions or comments about what we have here in 2 Chronicles chapter 9, please feel free to leave that in the comments section below. And again, I appreciate you taking some time to read along with me today. And I hope we'll get to see everybody for our Bible study tonight at 7 p.m. I hope to see you then. Again, have a great rest of your Wednesday, this first day of November. Just a couple more months of daily Bible readings as we get through the rest of the historical books. And then next year, I think we're going to read through the Psalms next year. A little preview for you. We'll be getting a schedule together. It won't be 7 days a week just because there's not enough Psalms to do that. So we will read probably 3 or 4 days a week. And again, I'll have a schedule out so we can read along together next year, continuing our look at the text, looking at the Psalms. But again, thanks for tuning in today. Hope to see you tonight and hope that you'll tune in again tomorrow as we read together on November 2nd, Thursday, November 2nd from 2 Chronicles chapter 10. Take care and God bless.